All right, we're going to start on our foundational videos with the concept of fueling your body. So on Eat, Move, Sleep, I like to think of eating as fuel. A lot of times we get stuck in diet mentality and restriction, and talking about diet and food and all that ends up, we have a lot of negative concepts and negative language around being on a diet, etc. I want you to think of it as optimizing your nutrition for health and energy. I want you to be super curious, and I want you to be a scientist so that you can start figuring out what works for your body. So this section is not intended to be a diet program. I'm not going to tell you what to eat or what not to eat, although we are going to talk a little bit about what not to eat. But you're going to make choices based on what you know about science, of course, but also start paying attention to how these things make you feel. I'm going to have the disclaimer: if you make nutritional changes that might affect medications you're on, please consult with your doctor. So as a nurse, I should be an example of how to eat and fuel my body. I want to be accountable to practice what I preach and to be an example to those I serve. I am often not that. And so I am working on this right alongside you. I have had times where I've done really well, and I have times where my nutrition has been absolutely horrible, and I would never recommend what I was eating to my patients. But we want to be good examples to our patients, to our families, to our children, but mostly you need to fuel your body appropriately to be the healthiest for yourself. There's a quote from, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Jiddu Krishnamurti. He says, "It is no measure of well-being to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society." I'm going to talk a little bit about our current what's out there in our nutrition that's available to us, what they promote. We have a lot of really unhealthy things available to us. We're a nation that has a lot of things available. Our grocery store is full, and it's mostly full of junk. We really feel like we want to be normal and eat like everybody else, but it's resulting in high levels of obesity and disease across the country, and healthcare is no exception to that. 60% of the American diet is ultra processed foods. These are foods that didn't exist prior to the pre-industrial revolution. 66% of our calories right now come from 4 different seeds: soy, rice, corn, and wheat. And none of those are really where we should be getting 66% of our calories. 20% of our calories come from soybean oil alone. It's in so many foods. If you look in almost any package that you pick up and read the label, there's soy in it. I'm not saying soy is evil in itself, but it should not be 20% of our calories. Our physiology drives our psychology. The more we tune up our nutrition and our fuel, the better our mindset will be. Depression is highly correlated with processed food consumption. So if you just want to make one small tweak this week, cutting down on how much processed food you eat can be huge. For every 10% of processed food you eat, you increase your risk of chronic disease by 14%. I'm going to repeat that. For every 10% of processed food you eat, you increase your risk of chronic disease by 14%. So, like I said, small changes, cutting down the processed food, decreases your risk of chronic disease. The food industry is spending $12 billion on nutritional science research. When we say maybe a food says it's, all this research they have, the food industry is the one doing the research. They have a conflict of interest when they're doing the research. It's junk science promoting junk food. A really good book, if you want to dig more into this, is by Mark Hyman, called Food Fix. So if the tobacco industry started telling you that cigarettes are healthy, you wouldn't believe them. We need to apply that same skepticism to research done by the food industry. Food labels were created to help us understand what's in our food. They're required to list the ingredients in order of how much is in the item. In other words, the more of an ingredient is in an item, the higher it shows up on the food label. If you look at food labels, you may see sugar listed with several of 60 different names. This allows it to show up lower on the food label because it decreases the amount that shows up in the item. For example, on a jar of jam, you might see strawberries listed as the first ingredient, and you might think, great, strawberries are healthy. But the next three ingredients are high fructose corn syrup, and sugar. If those were all added together, because they're all types of sugar, they would be the top ingredient, and you might not pick it up. So they're able to divide that up into the chemical names, and it allows strawberries to be first on the list. It's tricky. We think we're doing a good job by reading food labels, but even then, we can get fooled. Soda, if you're drinking soda with sugar, it's just liquid sugar. Juice is really the same thing. It's taken out all, like if you're drinking a fruit juice and thinking it's healthier, it's really too much concentrated sugar. Even if there's no sugar added, if you eat a piece of fruit, you're getting the fiber that goes with it. It digests slower. It reacts differently in the body. If you're drinking juice, it's just liquid sugar. Soda's even worse. We need to start seeing food as medicine. Your gut health is super important, and the way we're eating, we're not taking care of our gut health. They're beginning to call your gut as your second brain. It produces 90% of your body's serotonin. Serotonin regulates attention, behavior, and body temperature. It's a neurotransmitter that helps to mediate satisfaction, optimism, and happiness. If serotonin is low, people are usually depressed. It has 9 times the communication, your gut has 9 times the communication channels going up from the gut to the brain than down. So maybe it should be called our first brain. Traditional medical community views medical conditions from a symptomatic perspective. We live this every day. For example, we have symptoms, we give medications to treat the symptoms, and a lot of doctors don't try to keep looking back to figure out what the cause is. They just treat the symptoms. System thinking helps us to look at root causes, and food can be one of those root causes in a lot of chronic illnesses, mental health issues, etc. So again, I want you to be a scientist, and I want you to start paying attention to what you're eating and how you're feeling. Mental health, but also your physical health. How are your energy levels? How's bloating, bowel movements, etc. Start paying attention to all of that. So, best top 3 suggestions for food rules. Stop drinking your sugar. If you're drinking full sugar sodas, and if you're drinking fruit juice, I would recommend you stop. For every 150 calories you consume in sugar, you increase your risk of diabetes 7-fold. Sugar is a toxin. Natural sugars in whole foods is not the problem. It's the concentrated sugars that didn't even exist a few hundred years ago. A calorie is not just a calorie. They want you to think if you just cut calories, you'll be fine. But it matters where the calories come from. Different foods affect your physiology differently. We want to be fueling our bodies and not just feeding our bodies. So, second food rule, I know I said I wasn't going to tell you what to do, but this is, you're going to choose from this. Eat real food and not factory-made food. Get rid of ultra-processed factory food, factory fats. So for factory fats, I mean vegetable oils. Stick with olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, but not the factory fats. And skip factory farmed animal products. These animals were not fed what they were designed to eat. They're sickly and they're loaded with antibiotics. The other thing that happens with factory raised animals are the omega-3 to omega-6 ratios are off. So I'm not going to go deep into that science. We can get into it more if you want to, if you post in the group that you want more information. But the more, based on your budget, the more you can afford towards the organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised animals. If you can buy an animal for your meat from a local farmer, if you can buy eggs from a local farmer, that's ideal. Not everybody has that opportunity, but that's ideal. And then the third food rule, if you choose to accept the challenge, is have an eating sunset. Stop eating for at least 13 hours, and there's science behind why 13 hours. If you can have a longer break, then go for it. Intermittent fasting is fantastic, but at least 13 hours. And research recommends that you stop eating 4 hours before you go to bed. This allows your body to perform all the other processes it needs to do at night besides digestion. Digestion takes a huge amount of energy. So experiment with this. If you follow your sleep scores, or you have a, some sort of fitness tracker, and you can follow heart rate variability or see your heart rate at night, you may see differences. I know for me, I do see a difference. I usually stop eating at 5:30 or 6, depending on what time we have dinner. I don't eat after that. And then it's at least 13 hours before I eat again in the morning. If you, occasionally people need to have a snack at night because they're taking insulin. And if you have to do that, then you have to do that. But otherwise, experiment with moving up the time a little bit. You don't have to start, if you're eating at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, start just backing that time up a little bit and see how you feel. Like I said, if you have some sort of fitness tracker that you wear at night, look at your numbers and track it over a few weeks. You want to make the connection between the choices you're making, eating-wise, with how you feel, your energy, how's your mental health, are you creative, do you have good focus, are you feeling overall wellness, and then tweak and experiment. The number one predictor of our morbidity is waist to height ratio. So if you measure, a lot of medicine wants to go with the BMI, but the BMI is a terrible predictor. The BMI will show people as obese who are bodybuilders, who are, you can't just compare your height and your weight, because sometimes weight is not obesity. But waist to height ratio fits no matter whether you're a bodybuilder or someone like me, not a bodybuilder. So measure your height, and your waist should be half of your height. So I am 67 inches, I'm 5'7", and that means my waist should be 33.5. It is not, but it's my goal. If you're more than a 0.5 ratio, you're at more risk for disease. So I have a lot of work to do. How about you? If you're interested in reading more about all of this information, some references are Food Fix by Mark Hyman. That's Hyman, Mark Hyman, Food Fix. There's a book called Fat Chance by Robert Lustig. His last name is spelled Lustig. And then if you were only to get one book about all of these foundational things, I would recommend Eat, Move, Sleep by Tom Rath. Some of what comes from each of the videos this week are from that book. So I hope this is helpful. If you have questions, post them in the group or send me an email.